Alright, we are recording. Yay! For what is this, 102? Alright. And it was also Going Medieval Q was provided by Tinsley PR. And I was gonna say, because I kind of clicked out a little bit outside the window when it was loading. It doesn't always like that, but it seems to be working fine. I'm just looking at what things to talk about. In some ways, I do have a lot. In some ways, I don't. I mean, obviously, the main thing would be Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered has been officially announced and released this week, which is neat and all. But I'll be honest, I think I've said this before. I don't care for the Bethesda style RPG. And to be clear, what I refer to when I say Bethesda style is the whole you can start the game and it's like, oh yes, here's the thing you're supposed to be doing. Here's your main campaign. Here's your main quest. And let's not do any of that. Let's go off and do something else entirely, totally forgetting about that. I don't like that. I mean, it's like, you're here for that quest, aren't you? I feel you need to actually work on the quest. So. And then there's also, the running joke of if Bethesda ever puts out a game that has no bugs in it, it's a sign of the apocalypse. Which I think I did see or hear something that there are some bugs in it that are its bugs, not things that they have kept from the original. But it also wasn't just them. They at least partly outsourced it. Oh crap, I don't remember the name. The name of the developer. It is really interesting, though, the technical stuff there. Because it's... What you will see when playing it is Unreal Engine 5. But apparently they kept the original engine. They probably modified it some. But they kept the original engine. It's still running there. The old Game Brio engine is still running there. And is handling the various scripting for NPCs, combat. I think I saw something else mentioned as well. I just looked up on PC Gaming Wiki, and that's where it talked about this, and it's really neat to see that. It is also a little bit more of the running joke with Bethesda, because Oblivion was the last game that they used Gamebryo on. After that, they made their move to the Creation Engine, which is derived from Gamebryo. They've basically been using the same engine since Morrowind. Yeah. And no, seriously, like even Fallout 4, or is it Fallout 76, whichever one those is, still uses Creation Engine, which is directly tied to Gamebryo. Yeah. Yeah. But it's also, I feel, for some people that might be like, wow, really, they're doing that? But for other people, it would be like, yeah, they're totally doing that. Alright, how far back am I going? I want to get the supports in first. Because that way I can get the covering. But yeah, so because I am... Oh, yes, that is true. Hang on. I just realized I need to do that much at least. There. So this way they will have access, or easy access to every piece. My brain just turned off a little bit. That's right. Yeah, so I do have the original Oblivion, but I don't think I'll get this because Bethesda RPGs are not my thing. And while it has still been a while, it's more so like the Witcher series that I like, because it is a bit more the, here's your mission, go do it. Yes, there are side missions, even side campaigns, but there's never a doubt that the main mission is the main thing for you to spend time on. Because I feel like in Skyrim, isn't something like the Thieves Guild, you can go on that adventure and it's like as long, as expansive as the main campaign. It's like, that's neat and all, but aren't we supposed to be trying to save the world? Yeah. Only I have two other things. One of them, I'm sorry, I have to keep mocking this game. Yeah, we got the release date for it of May 21st, hang on just a second. Yes, May 21st is when we're getting Bonaparte, a mechanized revolution. And I have to mock this game. The gameplay might end up being great, but its alternate history design is like, what the hell is wrong with you, to me? Because as the name suggests, Bonaparte, a mechanized revolution set during the French Revolution that Napoleon Bonaparte was a part of. But you're not playing as Napoleon Bonaparte. In fact, it's not even clear Napoleon exists. Instead, you've got Celine and Sailor? Calor? I'm not sure how you'd actually pronounce that in French. But I think that they're brother and sister. I think they might actually be twin brother and sister. And you can play as either for this and do stuff. It's like, why are you using the French Revolution? Why are you using the Bonaparte name? This is the thing I want to mock. It's like, if you want to do alternate history, that's fine. I'm just like, French Revolution with mechs. You got it. But this just seems like, with using the Bonaparte name, it's like, dude, or rather dudes, because it's, the developers, if you want to do a story like this, well, if you want to do a game of this genre, go ahead and do it. Why do you have to abuse the real history? Like, abuse the name Bonaparte here? I don't understand that. I mean, just tell a new game, tell a new story, tell a new game. And by the way, that is my feeling on a lot of stuff, because I've talked about that before. Like, I dislike the concept of the idea of writing fan fiction. That if you have an idea for a story that's really good, why tie it to somebody else's work then? Why not make sure that it is your world, your story, so that everyone knows it is yours, not somebody else's? There we go. Oops. V to cop. Okay. I should also put down more of these. I just feel like waiting a little bit on some of that. But this way, at least, I have, like, the main structure to it. So, once they finish building it all. But yeah, I just... And that's true. Just looking back at how I wrote about it, it's like the whole completely inventing these Bonaparte siblings, it feels absurd and even touches on insulting. Like, if you actually care about the history at all, I mean, as I said, it's like, you put mechs in it, it's like, okay, yeah, I see what you're doing here. You're just, a hypothetical version of this where, it's like, what happens if we add this? Okay, yeah, I got that. But wait, you're completely changing the main characters by inventing these two characters. The main characters in history by inventing these two fictional characters. It's like, what are you doing now? I mean, just... Yeah, I from when the game was announced, I've been annoyed by that, so... That's not gonna change. Another thing I got to talk about. Well, there might be some other things I can pull from. But one thing's still kind of neat, at least to me. The SVT AB1 Psychovisual Fork has had a major update recently to 3.0.2. So I think that brings it in line with mainline. But it has its various changes to defaults and new features and all that. And it's been fun to play around with that some. Especially because they fixed one thing that has been an issue for me. Sort of. I've had a workaround, but I like using... They're putting the floor from up here? That's kind of funny. So when I take movies or television and put them on the server, I will use either 265 or AV1. Different media, different video requires different encoders, because some just work better than others. Like 265 is still much better at retaining detail than AV1 is. The way I'd actually describe the visual appearance, even with the Psychovisual Fork, is it seems like it's the idea of CRF, which is also a psychovisual concept, just turned up to 11. Which I guess I should explain that. So there's different ways to control the video quality when you encode video. One of them is setting the bit rate. It's just, yeah, you can use this many bits per not necessarily per frame, but within a certain time period, this is how much data you can use for it. That's fine. But there's also some, quality based. So, or you'll see referred to as a Q value, which is the quantization. The way this works is it's the amount. You're basically telling the encoder how much data they're allowed to throw away, which is why a higher Q value results in lower quality, because you're throwing more data away. Now, what CRF does, with Q, though, with the quantization, it will inherently be variable bit rate. What CRF does, constant rate factor, is it now changes, so instead of it being a constant quality, it will actually vary the quality, so it varies the Q value, based on motion on the screen. The reason for this is because psychovisually, so that's psychovisuals, psychoacoustics, all that, refer to how human brain interprets things. Oh, here. If I move it like this, you can actually have, because of the constant motion back and forth, it's hard for you to notice details. So the encoder can actually reduce the quality there, so because no one will notice. What seems to be the case with SVT, with AV1, at least this psychovisual fork, it seems to just be relying on that basically all the time. So if I do like a freeze frame and compare things, it's like, oh yeah, I can spot this different artifacting, and some of it is like, nah, I definitely don't want that. But if you just let it play, you won't notice it because it persistence of vision kind of stuff, that it won't be there. And that's neat and all, but it still is just kind of funny. But in any case, there's been a bug for a while that I'm very glad appears to have been fixed now. Which is one of the things that the psychovisual fork added is a new tune called Tune 3, and this is meant to be a better tune for psychovisual results. See, there's 0, which is image quality, and that's in the original. 1, try and remember. 1, I think, is tuned for peak signal to noise, PSNR. 2, I don't remember what 2 is for, but that's in mainline. 0, 1, and 2 are all in mainline. 3 is the psychovisual fork. There's also a 4, which is meant for still images. Yeah, in any case, Tune 3 was incompatible with setting up a maximum bitrate with CRF. If you tried to do it for quite a while, what would actually happen is for the first few seconds or so, there would be very, very, very bad artifacting. Well, that didn't stop me from still experimenting with it, and I managed to get some pretty good encodes. Even with that bitrate limit, where I just turned the CRF to where it should be. And so then, yes, there would be times when the bitrate would shoot up to 4 or 5 megabit. I like to target around 3 if I can. But enough of the time it was down at below 2 megabit that it bounced out, so the files would still be small. And with the psychovisual stuff, the grand synthesis, all that, the detail looked fairly good. But now it looks like the MBR maximum bitrate does work with Tune 3 again. Yay! So I'm hoping to be able to put that to work, but I don't have any video to re-encode. It's like I'm caught up on everything. I'm not caught up on watching everything that I have, though. So yeah, it's like I'll get through it. I'll get to that stuff. But it's good to see that, because that would allow me here to use it as an example. Avatar is there are scenes in that are terrible to try to encode because there's so much detail, so much fine detail, and a lot of motion. Which that no encoder's gonna like that. And I know years ago, I'm just thinking it would have been 2 or 3 years ago. I tried letting AV1 do its thing, and it was that bitrate was shooting up so high because it had to. In order to try to get the quality that I wanted in certain places, but there are other places where it's like, we don't necessarily need it that high. Well, in theory, I don't feel like doing it again. But in theory, I could pull Avatar off and try redoing it this way, and use the maximum bitrate. So now, like, limit that to, say, 5 or 6 megabit. And then that way, at the scenes where... Because, I mean, it was hitting, like, 10 megabit in places. So this way, it would be... those scenes where it uses a lot, it will be constrained, so it won't be able to take as much as it wants, but chances are at 5 megabit it's still going to look fine. And then everywhere else, it has benefit of not being constant bitrate. It can be lower wherever it feels it needs to be. So yeah, that I do like. I don't know when I may take advantage of it, but still, nice to see. And they let me see, they did other changes. They changed the because you can actually set the psychovisual rate distortion. Don't ask me to explain all that. I have an idea, but I could be wrong. But it is a way to control the level of adjustment to the algorithm, to the encoder, for psychovisual purposes. So, like, yes, tune it this way so it tries to be more psychovisually appealing, but it may introduce artifacting. That's my interpretation. I could be wrong there. They've set... They raised default. They've said default for that's non-zero. Used to be 0. But they've also set it where... Well, the default is 0.5. If you set it to 0.6, it will use a high-quality mode. Whatever that actually means. And they made some changes there. They have a second rate distortion algorithm called SPY-RD. That now has levels to it. I think they changed the defaults for noise normalization, which impacts how much bitrate it's willing to throw at apparently noisy blocks, noisy parts of the image. So a higher noise normalization value means more bits will be spent there, so it should preserve that detail better. What other things I don't remember? Other things I can think of that impact me, I don't remember. But no, it's definitely neat to see. Need to see that. Done some experimenting with it. And yeah. Maybe I'll actually put it to use in the future. I mean, it is just hard to say because I need to first grow my collection, which actually I do have a couple things that should be coming soon. One of them next week even. So yeah, that may be interesting to see what I get out of that. But that's... I like my epics. I don't have Lawrence of Arabia. I do want to get it at some point, but there's a 4K version of Gandhi. Doesn't include regular Blu-ray. I can't play 4Ks at the moment. But there's also regular Blu-ray in there of Gandhi. So ordered that. That should be arriving sometime next week. So that'll be interesting. And it's hard to say because rule of thumb, it doesn't always apply, but rule of thumb is if it's a modern movie, AV1 will work well because typically film grain is fine enough that film grain synthesis, that you will lose some film grain because it looks like noise just by the nature of video encoders. They throw out some amount of data. This high frequency noise is likely to be part of it. So film grain synthesis allows it to artificially try to add some back in. Which just basically generates an overlay that goes over that is rendered on top of the image. Yeah. Now the thing, and as I said, newer films generally that'll work fine with because film grain synthesis sucks. It really does because it is very obviously tuned for these newer for fine grain. Well, yeah, a finer film grain. Whereas older films that have a larger film grain, what the heck? Why did that go off? This is my pet. You do not go off. Must have misfired. I didn't even know that was a thing. Anyway, so yeah, so for older films, no. AV1 will both strip out the grain, and then it can't correctly put it back in because it doesn't know how to do that with film grain synthesis. I'm really, really, really hoping somebody, like with AV2, or just comes up with a way to change the grain synthesis system now so it supports heavier, larger grain sizes. Okay. It's just weird because I was clicking on it because you can see it at this point, but it's not real yet. Now it is. Anyhow, yeah. So for older films, 265 x 265 specifically works very nicely because it is good at preserving detail, sharp detail. So it works well preserving the film grain then. But it can require higher bitrate, so. But that's where X265, that setting a maximum bitrate, not that bad, not that difficult in there, so. Yeah. So it is basically nice to see that now AV1, well, rather this fork of it, has approached feature parity for that kind of tuning stuff that I like to do with X265. There's likely still be plenty of times where X265 is better, so we'll see. But going back to Gandhi, that would have been a very well-made film. It's been a while since I've watched it. But well-made enough that film grain might still be small. Like, they would have used very high-quality film that would have very small grain. But it still is an older film, so it might be that it still is using older stuff. But that it just... what film was available still had visible grain to it. Don't know. Do not know. Okay. Yeah, so we shall see. And then I got another movie that should be coming sometime next month. That is a silent from the 20s. So that will have film grain. Very noticeable. Unless they denoised it, and hopefully they didn't. But yeah, that one will be interesting in part because I have the remake of it, a remake of it that occurred in the 60s, I think. Hang on. Might have been 50s. Let me look. Actually, I have it right here. The bulk of my library is within like arm's reach for me. Some of it is more accessible than others. 61. Okay. But part of what is interesting about the silent films is that, well, for one thing, they're not silent. Technically, there's never been really truly been a silent film, because there's always at least like music going with it. But what else is neat is there's also technically never really been black and white films. I mean, well, no, I shouldn't say that, because there would have been some early ones that would have been that. But various older films that you would think, oh yeah, that's going to be black and white. No, they actually went in and tinted certain sections. So, well, here, The Matrix, if you watch that, any scene within The Matrix has a green tint to it. Any scene in the real world has a blue tint to it, right? Now, that's color film. It's like, yeah, we're just going to have more blue. You know, like tilt, like have the blue at a higher level, have the green at a higher level, depending on where you are. You know, for this, the process for developing the film, they tinted it green. No, they tinted it blue or whatever that they wanted. They also would go in and hand paint on the film to give it color. And so that's really neat. And that's also part of the reason why I like having some of these films, especially when they are the recreations, where they were later remade. Because just be able to see the differences and see how you might think that, oh, this older one, it's not going to be as advanced, it's not going to be as visually impressive. And it's like, no, it's actually very impressive. And actually one good example, although I don't know how well, no, I think that you can still get that version. But the Ten Commandments is especially interesting because the 57, I would think. That one I can't reach. I mean, I can reach it. It's just, there. I can't reach it, but it's just buried under other things, so I'd have to move a lot to get to it. But both the 50s version and the 20s version were made by Cecil B. DeMille. He actually remade his own film 30 years later or so. It's it's actually really interesting to watch. And the version that I have of the Blu-ray for the 50s version, it does come with the original, also at 1080. But it's so they did actually work on that. Really need to watch both because the Ten Commandments, Story of Exodus, it includes the parting of the Red Sea. I think that the 20s version looks better. And even if you don't care for the story, whatever, if you watch it, it's still an impressive film. You can still watch that. And I think a lot of people may agree. I think it's not so much how the effect stuff looks, but how it was integrated with the rest of the film. With the rest of the film elements, I think looks better in the 27th version. I think that's 20s. It's 20s at least. But it definitely did have some of the stuff they color tinted, some of it they hand tinted. They also did actually shoot some of those scenes in color. It was just very expensive to do that, so it's not the whole film. Yeah, it is the 20s version is a curious film, and it's... I think a way to put it is, it's not in all ways a modern film. Even the 50s version is modern. As far as style, film style, cinematic style, the 50s version is still a modern film. It would be superior to basically any film made today. It's not that kind of modern. And the storytelling is far better in that than what we get in most stuff today. But the cinematography and such is more recognizable as, oh yeah, that's how we make films today. The 20s version, or just how the storytelling was, the 20s version is kind of weird because it goes between Story of Exodus and what was then a modern story. It's a bit more on the nose with being a morality play kind of thing. And it's like, it feels a bit much, but that was the style of stories back then. Because so much of it would have been still plays, based on plays. So, yeah, it's... Okay, that's just those being put in. But yeah, it's... Okay. So I just want to check how long I've been going. But yeah, it's... I like my movies, and I like talking about them. I'd like to finish the... Oh, you know what? That's true. That's actually very true. Yeah, did I not? Yeah, I didn't. There. I actually don't want to extend these out because it's going to be winter and I don't want them planting in winter. Which is a silly thing to say. Not because I think planting in winter is a good idea. No, it would not be. But that they would try to. Oh, man. I'm sorry. It's just the whole, this is really not a simulation. Oh, man. There's so many things that would have to be redone and done differently to come close to being an actual simulation. I'm just trying to think, what else can I talk about? Should I talk about that? I could, in theory. Just the whole, I do not have Disney Plus. I have no interest in anything on Disney Plus, but I have seen some of the discussion about the scene in Andor Season 2, whatever episode it is. And it's like, it is weird, the discussion. I mean, let me put it like this. As a storyteller, and I do have some stories in mind where that content would actually be in the story, I do firmly believe that no, nothing should be off limits for a story. However, at the same time, I feel it always needs to serve a purpose, and you don't necessarily want to contradict the character of a story. So those that say this doesn't belong in Star Wars, yes, I do agree with them on that. Now, I do understand those saying, oh, but you have this example where it's implied. It's like, well, yes, but implication is different from action. from on-screen action. And there's also, because they will use the example of what did Jabba do to Leia, but it's like, even in the novelization, and it's been a few months since I've read that, it's not clear that she was abused in that way. Abused in other ways, yes. But, yeah, and it's also when you actually think about it with Jabba, it would make sense. He would not allow that kind of stuff to happen to her yet. That he would make sure it took time to break her down. Because he is a sadistic piece of filth. And he would take pleasure over it taking the time for it. He doesn't need to do it right away. So I think you can make an argument that no, that didn't happen to her. Plus, there's also a line in there that she actually describes what happened in A New Hope, that the torture that Tarkin ordered for her being worse. And that would have been, like, in the movie, it's indicated drugs. In the book, it's indicated, no, there's also, like, electrode kind of stuff, even, like, potential mutilation going on there. It's like, and she describes that as being worse. Which that would have been more so just a physical violation than emotional violation, because I'm trying to avoid saying the words. I probably shouldn't care, but in any case, I'm like, we shouldn't be afraid to use the actual words. We shouldn't. But it's like, for this channel, no. For another channel that I do, where I actually do story analysis, like chapter by chapter stuff, and I do have some stories that we'll get into. There's some books I want to do for that. That we'll get into, not this topic, but other topics, where it's like, oh yeah, I will totally talk about that. I won't hold back, because it's like, no, the nature of that channel kind of calls for it, to just be honest with it. But in any case, so yeah, I get the people arguing, and also the whole, well, it's more of an adult show, so that's why it's like, okay, but does that mean that on Disney Plus, if you logged in as a child, like on a child's account, that you won't see it then? Or will it be there? I was like, I'm completely serious. Like, if I have, with my physical media, in theory, I can put physical media in places such that if I had children, they wouldn't be able to access some of it. Okay? Like, I mean, I got two examples down here that I love using these two examples. The Last Starfighter and RoboCop. The Last Starfighter, I'd watch it with an infant, okay? That is such a good movie. I love that film, and it's fine. I mean, there's one scene that's a bit intense, but it's like, it shouldn't be a problem for young kids. But RoboCop, no. You need to be an adult for that. I mean, I can understand not necessarily going all the way to 18, that, you know, like 15, 16, depending on the person, that would be fine. So, yeah, but it's like, I can make sure that RoboCop would be somewhere that somebody too young would not get access to. Is that the case with Disney Plus? Because I thought I also saw something that recently people were taking pictures of the homepage of Disney Plus, and it was showing something where it's like, yeah, this is not all right for kids, but they'd be pulling up Disney Plus, and that's the first thing they'd see. So it's like, if it's not being curated properly, then no, you cannot argue that, oh, well, it's safe, that, oh, well, this is an adult show, it's not meant for kids. It's like, if the kids have access to it, guess what? It becomes a kids show. Okay, and it's like, that is the case there. And it's also, apparently, it's like TV-14. It's like, depending, that would still be you don't want kids seeing some of that. At least not necessarily in that way. It all depends, because I've not seen the scene. I'm never going to see the scene, because I have no interest in watching the show. And no interest in ever having Disney Plus. But still is, yeah. And there's also the whole implied versus not. And sometimes an implication is worse than being explicit, because allowing somebody's imagination to fill in the voids, it might be that they actually come with something more intense, or at least more meaningful for them. So, yeah, I mean, it's complex, because it is also, as I said, you shouldn't feel, when you're crafting a story, you shouldn't feel that things should be off limits. that there's certain things that are just off limits. I don't think that's appropriate, because the story should just be what the story should be. Yeah, and it's... But at the same time, well, there are... Sorry, I just had an image of how there are some things that are pushed into stories where it's like, yeah, there's no way this is actually appropriate. There's no way this is necessary for the story either. Where it's like, oh, yeah, where it's like you look at it and say, yeah, clearly this is somebody had a fetish that they're putting in here because they want it there. It's like, that's screwed up. Because then that also means that depending, you are now pushing this fetish onto people that have no interest, might even be repulsed by your fetish because they want the other thing. Like, I want to watch Star Wars, and now you're getting this. I'm not saying what they put in there is a fetish thing. I'm not. I was just, because Star Wars was the IP I was talking about. And by the way, well, you know what? No, this is actually a good example. In Nemesis, in Star Trek Nemesis, I love Star Trek. That's a terrible movie, but part of it is how Deanna Troi, or Deanna Riker at that point, is mentally violated. Like, that is actually... I am not comfortable with that. I don't think that's I don't... There's a lot about that movie I really don't like. But that's definitely one of them, where it's like, why is this here? This isn't necessary. They should have told a completely different story, in my opinion. But it's still, it's like, you should have done it differently. Now, the funny thing is, that's actually not the first example of such a violation in Star Trek. But the other one I'm okay with, because it is handled... It's more implied than explicit. And it's also... The weight of it is not dismissed. That's in Star Trek 6. At the end of it, when Spock is doing the mind meld with Valeris, you can interpret that, because of how she ends up having such horror and pain on her face, that he is violating her. That it is completely a violation there, because he needs to get information from her. But at the same time, you see him in pain. Like, even he hates what he is doing. Even he is in pain. Even he is suffering from this. So, it makes it... It is more the implication there of this horrible thing. But it exists as the implication. You're not seeing what's happening there, like you do in Nemesis. Now, true, for what they were trying to do in Nemesis, you would have to show things, but it still is. Nemesis, I feel that was wrong. That is not necessary for that story. And it's also, as I was saying, Nemesis is not a good story. It's not a good movie. It's not a good Star Trek story. So it's like, the whole thing, yeah. But no, I mean, but it is, as I said, with Star Trek 6, technically that does have an example of, it's a mental and emotional violation there. But it is there, but I think that is handled much better. And that, I think, is still a PG movie. Because even without, because this is another advantage with implication, is that a child will imply things differently, infer things differently than an adult. So an adult might see that and be like, oh, I know what's going on here. A child might look at it and just think pain, not violation. So, yeah, it's... And that I think is... See, now I'm actually kind of thinking it would be interesting, those people who are arguing in good faith that, no, the scene is fine, that to use that distinction, to compare those two scenes and explain that this is why... Like, this is why I think this is okay, this is why I think this isn't okay. I wonder how they would respond to that. Because also, I have seen some people talk about it where they do disagree, but it was great to watch this because it was an actual argument. An actual traditional argument. It was not about getting agreement, okay? That's not the purpose of an argument. An argument is more about explaining yourself, explaining your position, such that even if somebody disagrees with you, they understand why you have the belief that you have, why you have the opinion that you have. And that's what it was. It ended with that. And they understood each other. They disagreed, but they understood with each other. That would be fine. That was great. But it's like, because, as I said, that you do have an example of violations like that in Star Trek even. Not physical. It's mental, because it's all with telepathy. But it's like, you do have one example that I don't think, I could believe a lot of people, you'd have to actually say to them, you do realize that this is kind of what's happening there. And they'd probably be like, oh, yeah, you're right. Whereas in Nemesis, it's like, no, that's exactly what's happening. You know exactly what's happening there. They're showing you it happening there. And I can believe a lot of people be like, yeah, no, that shouldn't have been filmed. But I think a lot of people that'd be like, yeah, that made me uncomfortable. Well, plenty of them would also be like, yeah, well, the whole movie's trash. I'm not going to share that with kids anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's... I don't remember what Nemesis is rated. Hang on, I just realized. I can pull it up on my phone. Oh, wait, no. There. Nemesis is PG-13. 6 is, yeah, just PG. I can also check on 10 Commandments. Wait, where's... Ah, there it is. Okay, 1923 and 1956. Okay. Yeah, I forgot that because I have Jellyfin on the phone and can connect to the server and show me all that. Alright, yeah, probably been going long enough. I feel like there's a little bit more I could mention. Yeah, I would also add, because some people bring up, oh, well, there's this stuff that happened in this book. It's like, okay, there are people, like for me, I've watched 6 Star Wars, well, technically the 9, 10, 11 Star Wars films. So, original trilogy, prequel trilogy, sequel trilogy, I've watched once each, never again. Solo, watched once, never again. Rogue One, I watched once, and I mean, there are things, it has problems, but there are also things about it that are neat. I like the space battle in that, at the end. Because, like, okay, this actually felt like an intentional space battle. Whereas you look at space battles in basically any other Star Wars movie, and it's not. Like, you have a lot of it is ships, the main ships are just sitting there doing nothing. Like, just firing and being fired on. That's it. Like, everything is just fighters going around, and the Millennium Falcon is, like, the largest ship that seems to be moving. It's like, that's really boring. Rogue One, there's actually more action. There was more action there, so I do like that. I do appreciate that. But it's like, that's all I really know for Star Wars. I have read all 6 of the original trilogy and prequel novelizations. I actually did do chapter-by-chapter analysis of them, too, for that other channel that I mentioned. That's it. I have no interest going beyond that. Because I'm just like, would I do any of the expanded universe stuff? Maybe, but I don't feel need to be honest. Because I don't have a need for it, and I've got other stories that I do want to read, other books I want to read, so those would get a priority. But it's still, if you're like, oh, well, it was in this other book, it's like, yeah, well, who's going to read that? Star Wars is a movie franchise, not a book franchise, even though there are books. So it is the film medium that is the most important there. So you need to be careful of the content there. And just because, oh, well, they did it in the book, it's like, yeah, but who's reading the book? It's like that does have an impact on the situation. It's also funny because I saw some people recently talking about saying Revenge of the Sith is the best novelization of them. It's like, I'm wondering if they actually read the same book as I did, because no, it's the worst of the 6. I mean, it contradicts Attack the Clones. It made me hate characters that, in some cases, I should like, in other cases, I should at least respect. It has certain contradictions with it. So, like, yeah. So, in the book, it spends a fair amount of time talking about Palpatine getting his lightsaber, that he had to, a decade prior, actually more than a decade prior even, had to hide it in this statue made out of neutronium, very dense metal, because basically there would be no way for somebody to scan it and find it in there. And then, before the Jedi Masters come to arrest him, he uses the Force, reaches in to turn it on, because turning it on, it will ignite and just melt a hole through and then fall out of the statue for him to use it. Which is kind of neat. There are certain problems here. For one thing, how is he training Darth Maul if he didn't have a lightsaber? But it talks about, once he's holding it again, how it feels so great to have this old friend back in his hand, that, like, feeling complete now that it's there. And also, I guess you could even say it's like him now feeling like he is, once again, Darth Sidious, no longer just playing Palpatine, Chancellor Palpatine. So it's like, that's actually really neat. But it's like, that happens. And then, like, the next day is when Yoda comes to fight him, and he has another lightsaber. And it's like, where did he get this from? You just wrote, this actually kind of beautifully written, well written, about him being so happy, so satisfied to have his lightsaber back in his hand. And that he had to hide it, and it was necessary for him to hide it and all that. But now it's like, oh yeah, now I just got another one. It's like, where did that come from? Because his original one was destroyed by Mace Windu in that fight. Right, so it's like he had to have a spare around somewhere. Where did he hide that? And where was that hidden that he could just freely get his hands on it so quickly, but also at the same time no one find it? It's like, this is nonsense. It really is. So yeah, I mean, it's to be fair to those people that read it and think that's great, it's not. I'm sorry, I have to keep saying it's not. Let me put it this: my whole recommend, fail to recommend, recommend against. Revenge of the Sith is unequivocal to me. Recommend against. So it would be a -3 there. The Empire Strikes Back, it has problems. That story has so many problems in the novel form. It does have some things that are really, really neat, but it's also like the majority of the characters in there are stupid and acting against their own motivations. Because that's what the story needs them to do. They're acting for what the story needs them to do. They're not... The story is being told by them acting according to their characters. But anyway, that would be my second least favorite. But that might be more of a failure to recommend than actually recommend against. Revenge of the Sith is straight up, I don't think it's worth reading. But I think that, to be fair to those people who think that's great, I also came at it, well, for one thing, immediately after reading Attack of the Clones. Right? I went New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and then Revenge of the Sith. I read them back to back to back. I also was reading all 6 of them to be critical. Like, after every chapter, I recorded a video being critical of them, of the chapter. Both positive and negative. I mean, the final few chapters of Return of the Jedi are amazing. All right, and if you ever find those videos and watch them, you'll see me talking about how amazing it is. I loved that. So, I mean, that's the whole point of those videos, though, to be critical, to analyze this stuff, to be critical of it, of what I like and what I don't like. Revenge of the Sith, I hated. But it is, maybe if you only read it for entertainment, you don't read it to be critical, and you certainly don't read it to judge it against the other books, that then you may see, okay, no, there are things that you don't see the things that are stupid, you don't see that are bad, that are poorly written and badly written. Maybe you don't see those as much. But for me, nah, I had to see it all. And I did see it all. And it is, like, it legitimately contradicts Attack of the Clones multiple times, which that is I don't care if you say that, oh yes, even George Lucas was involved and went over this. It doesn't matter. There should have been an editor familiar. The writer also should have been familiar, because it was a different writer. Between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, should still have read Attack of the Clones, or even just watched it. Because there is one thing that straight up... there's a statement Yoda makes in Revenge of the Sith that straight up contradicts the events at the end of Attack of the Clones. Alright? You cannot ignore this. It is just wrong what he says. Because he says that... Crap, my brain turned off a little bit. He says that if it would end the war, if it would destroy evil, that yes, we as Jedi must allow other Jedi to die. That if it would cost them their lives, we will do that. But the end, and this is Yoda speaking, the end of Attack of the Clones is he lets Dooku go. He lets evil go. He lets the war continue so that he can save Obi-Wan and Anakin. Like, his actions directly contradict this. And this is Yoda. An aspect of Yoda is that he is, at 800 years old, is a constant. Alright? In fact, there's even some inflection on that in Revenge of the Sith. And this I was okay with. I think it could have been handled better, but this I was okay with. How he basically came to realize that because of his outsized influence on the Jedi, he never prepared them. Because he was used to the old ways. He was used to the tradition, and he carried that forward. But he never realized, it never occurred to him, that the Sith could return in a different way. So he was completely unprepared for Palpatine, completely unprepared for Sidious, and because of 800 years and his influence on the Jedi, no Jedi was prepared for any of it. Which, that's actually a really interesting statement. I think it could have been stated better, but it is stated. Yoda comes to this realization during his fight with Palpatine. And it's like, yes, that is very good. And it is an interesting argument. And even in Star Control Origins, you actually see this. I don't remember the name of the Centaur guys, that species. But there's an aspect of they live so long that they, at one point, you can even in the conversation have them acknowledge that they cannot adapt. They've lost the ability to adapt because they live so long. They don't have new generations that have to adapt to the situation. They've made their adaptations and then forced the universe to adapt to them. That's how this older generation, so they know they are going to die out. But it's not like they can give up their empire. I think that actually, it was towards the end. Was it the first or second playthrough though? I don't remember. Because it was like you even get the guy to borderline acknowledge that humanity will be the next rulers of the galaxy. They will replace us because you have this power to adapt in ways that we don't anymore. But in any case, so Yoda should never contradict himself, and yet he does. There's also some statements about that where it contradicts the Phantom Menace. I'm trying to remember. I think it was in Revenge of the Sith where it was saying something like how Yoda viewed Anakin, but it's like at the end of the Phantom Menace, it's in the book at least, it is clear that Yoda was against Anakin, but then like in Revenge of the Sith, it was saying no, he wasn't, or maybe it was in Attack of the Clones that Yoda was in favor of him. I mean, it's other things where it's like, no, you are contradicting previously written things. You can't do that. But definitely the statement that, oh yeah, I would totally let you guys die if it meant we'd end the war. It's like, well, you basically could have stopped the war before it started, but instead you didn't act because you wanted to save these two people. One of them you're telling I will let die to end the war. It's like, yeah. Like I said, I like talking about this stuff. That's one advantage with the other channel. But I'm not here to promote that. So I will talk about things I've done that I won't talk about the channel itself, which seems contradictory, but kind of how it works. Anyway, I shall see you next time.